InGoal Radio, the podcast presented by The Hockey Shop. TheHockeyShop.com, source for sports Langley. We are going to delve into one of the biggest debates in goaltending today. Tuck or untuck? Plus, movement at the deadline. We've got a great feature interview brought to you by NHL Sense Arena with Filip Gustavsson, as we say hello to the co-founders of InGoal magazine, David Hutchison and Kevin Woodley. David, you have to talk instead of just waving.
Hello, Darren. It's lovely to see you. Hello, listeners. It's awesome to have you along for the ride. How's that? That was talking. Now you're not
Good.
talking.
Why is Woody not talking?
Oh, it'll be the last time all day.
You guys are not very nice to me. Me and Hutch are tired, and so's Darren. This has been a grind of a week. Hutch is just killing himself with the upcoming Goalie Coaches Guide and online directory. Folks, if you're just hearing about this for the first time, make sure you get in touch with us at coaches@ingoalmag.com. It's getting a little late in the day, but you can probably still sneak a free listing in the next 24 hours or so. Darren's been grinding with NHL games in the trade deadline. I've been grinding with NHL games in the trade deadline. It's been a busy week, so it's nice to sort of kick back, take a deep breath, and talk a little goaltending with you boys. Also, in addition to Filip Gustavsson for this week's podcast, we got a solid half hour with the legend of Marc-Andre Fleury that we're going to hold on to for a future edition. So it's been a busy but a good week here at InGoal.
You're not committing to what edition that is?
Yeah. Why are we playing with episode?
He's a little afraid he can't come up with 6 more guests.
Yeah, because Fleury makes perfect sense to be episode 300. He is that special, one of the all-time greats, and we have episode 300, which is a nice milestone coming up for us. But to Hutch's point, one of two things could happen that would derail us holding him for episode 300. One would be something happens one of these weeks and a guest bails. And two would be Dominic Hasek shows up to do episode 300, because that's about, maybe Patty
We go
Waugh.
doubleheader. We go doubleheader, triple header. We can celebrate all day long if it's 300.
Like Fleury's such a great goalie and great person and great guy to talk to that it would pretty much, in my mind, take one of those, greatest of all time. Like, what do they say? What's the
Goat.
What's the thing on the wall? The canyon with the pictures.
Oh, Mount Rushmore.
He would have. It would have to be somebody on the Mount Rushmore.
How did you get that from thing on the wall? Thing on the wall, I don't come up with Mount Rushmore.
I know what Woody thinks.
I was making hand gestures, and we've been working together for a long time.
15 plus years. I get Woody.
I'm looking around my room going,
Thank you.
what? What's he talking about? And then you go Mount Rushmore. Yeah, that's it.
Seriously, Hutch and me have been together for so long doing this that he can see into the brain and see the gaps that have been caused by all the concussions and pick out a
thing on the side of the mountain, maybe, but not in the wall.
Mount Rushmore. I was struggling to come up with it.
Great minds think alike, Woody.
Very impressive.
Thanks, buddy. We should do charades together.
My mother also said simple minds seldom differ, so I don't know.
So you're thinking Hasek may show up?
No, I'm just saying those are one of two things that could happen in order to bump Flower out of number 300. It's what I'm trying to say very poorly, clearly, because I spent 4 minutes saying it now, is that it would take something significant for us to run Marc-Andre Fleury instead anywhere other than episode 300.
Hey, Darren, do you remember the beginning where you said Woody was being silent? You spent 4 minutes to say, we got Fleury for episode 300.
Yeah. 4 minutes.
Yep, that's why he gets paid to talk to people online, and I just sit here quietly.
You'd think I get paid by the minute. I'd be a rich man if so.
Oh, God, yeah.
I got a funny story for you guys from being on the ice with one of our buddies. I'll say that for a little bit, but it's just cool how you get to be inside the world, but you're really not in the world because you're not good enough to be in the world. And it's just
I can't wait to hear
back and forth. The goalie market at the NHL trade deadline, I was putting it at about 1.5 for a number of goalies moved, and we blew through that. Not exactly where I expected. Everybody's looking at Binnington or Skinner or John Gibson. None of those guys moved. Spencer Knight goes to the Chicago Blackhawks, and then you've got Mrazek and Chris Driedger and Vitek Vanacek along with Capo Kakinen. So there was a lot of quantity in there.
4 trades involving 5 goalies. That is over any of the betting lines that I would have participated in. I would have bet the under, and I would have been wrong. So to me, the most significant one, and it's not a win now deal, it's not a load up down the stretch deal, but Spencer Knight to the Chicago Blackhawks is part of that Seth Jones deal. I'm not sure that the public understands how good this young man is already, let alone can be. I think a lot of people see the pedigree and know what the possibilities are. But when I looked up his numbers for the season right now in Florida, and after his first start with Chicago, or first couple starts here with Chicago, he's at plus 1.4% adjusted save percentage, and that probably means nothing to anyone, but it's basically where his save percentage sits relative to the environment he participates in. That is 6th in the National Hockey League. That is up there slightly above the Igor Shesterkins, Connor Hellebucks, and Filip Gustavssons of the world in the top 10 right now. That is an impressive season he's having. Now, obviously a smaller sample size. It can be tougher to continue that when you start to play the number of games that a Shesterkin or a Hellebuck or a Gustafsson is playing, but impressive nonetheless. And a hint that for all the talk of pedigree and upside and potential when it comes to Spencer Knight, the reality is he's already living up to a lot of it.
You just whetted the appetite, though. That was a beautiful breakdown on Spencer Knight, but who's 1 to 5? I got to know now.
Do I get a drum roll? All right. Okay, that was good. Number 1. Oh, hold on.
You got to go from 5.
Yeah, let's go to reverse order. And this one, maybe this one should be taken out because I cut the threshold at 250 chances. We're far enough in the season that, that's not significant. So he's only seen 260, tiny sample size. But how about Levi Marilainen? I always struggle with that one, the Ottawa Senators. I heard somebody, it might have been your old friend, Darren, Doug McLean, on the radio the other day with Kipper and Bourne saying Ottawa's best goalies in the American League. But, you just picture that with the way he does it. It's so well. He's not wrong. That kid was having a hell of a year. Number 4, Dustin Wolf of the Calgary Flames. Number 3, another small sample size guy. So maybe I take out the small sample size guy and Spencer Knight's into the top 5 easily. Frederik Andersen, in a tiny sample, has performed really well. Number 2, Logan Thompson, the biggest sample of this crew outside of Dustin Wolf. And number 1, Anthony Stoller's mid-sized sample, right? Bigger than the 2 small guys, but injuries obviously cost him a stretch of the season. Number 1 in adjusted save percentage at this point of the year. Now, like I said, the Shesterkins, Hellebucks, Spencer Knight, Pyotr Kochetkov as well, Filip Gustavsson, Mackenzie Blackwood, they're all sort of kicking around in that top 10 with a lot more games played and shots faced. But that's who your top 5 are right now at that 250 chance cutoff.
What's a fair number of chances to cut it off at this point in the season? If you're being unfair at 250.
Probably around 400 or so. That would, Spencer Knight's only seen 590, so because he hasn't been a starter. I guess it depends. You want to filter for just the guys who are pure number 1s or 1As, or do you want to include guys that have had small set? Like Freddie Anderson's, it's because of injury, right? We know he can be a starter. So I'd say probably 450. And then all of a sudden, Spencer Knight's 4th in the National Hockey League if I do that.
And there's one true veteran guy in that group. I would say Frederik Andersen, that's been a number 1. That's what jumps out to me about that list.
Yeah, fair point. And there's also quite a bit of, say, inconsistency wouldn't be a fair word, but there's a lot of ups and downs in there. Like a month ago, Logan Thompson was almost double that. A month ago, I was talking about him having a season much like Igor Shesterkin when they were talking about he should win the Hart Trophy. Like that's how good he was sort of through early January, and it's dropped off a little bit. Wolf's actually continued to climb as the season's gone on. Obviously, Marilainen's in the American Hockey League right now. Stoller's just picked up right where he left off since coming back from injury. So, there's a lot of sort of different ways to get there. And I would argue, even like a Connor Hellebuck, who was near the top of this list through January, he dropped off in January, again, relative to the environment. Not a lot of people notice it because that environment's the best defensive in the NHL. It's just really interesting to kind of look through these numbers. And again, to get back to the point I was trying to make, before I ran into my bad case of verbal diarrhea. Spencer Knight is good. I should just left it at that. Hey, Spencer Knight, he's good.
At least I helped you go down the
All right.
rabbit hole this time and sent you after other stats. And it's not all on you. You can blame me.
Thanks, Hutch.
Mm-hmm.
I chatted with Paul Maurice, head coach of the Florida Panthers, on 100% Hockey that I do with my buddy John Shannon. And it was after the trade. In fact, it was like 20 minutes after they did the Vanacek deal. So we got a little bit on that as well. But on Spencer Knight, he said, Spencer Knight is more cut out to be a starter, a number one guy, than a backup. When he gets into a rhythm and he plays like he's solid, he a little inconsistent when he's a backup, and he expects big things with Chicago. And I thought that was an interesting thing. He also said, I know nothing about goaltending, and I don't pretend to know anything about goaltending, but his perception of watching Spencer when he had the chance to play a little more regularly versus being the backup, which he was to Bob, was two slightly different performance levels.
Which bodes well, because the numbers I gave you in terms of his performance was mostly while playing sporadically behind Bob, right? So that only bodes well to hear that. I will say that for a guy who says he doesn't know much about goaltending, Paul Maurice had a hell of a butterfly in that playoff documentary.
Yes, he did.
When he was down on his knees in the locker room trying to show the guys
epic?
where to shoot. That was so good.
We have to ask him about
Can't
that.
believe you got him on your show. That's awesome. I'd love to have him on here just to talk about goaltending, even though he thinks he doesn't know anything. He'd be entertaining.
We could do 30 minutes with him, even though he himself claims he doesn't know anything about goaltending.
He's kind of runs a little like me. When you say 30 minutes, is that 3 or 4 questions, Darren?
Episode 299. Here we go.
Paul is a hockey writer's dream. Every time I've asked him a question, and quite often about goaltending or scoring and the trends around it, I get a well thought out, insightful, and thankful I have a subscription service to transcribe answer.
Paul and Bruce Cassidy would be my go-to for head coaches. If I could do one of those hot stoves, man, oh man, it'd be good. They'd end up just talking with each other. It'd be so awesome. Love. Oh, and here's another one. We had Scotty Bowman on a couple of weeks ago, and at the end of it, Scotty, like it usually happens, he starts asking us questions because he just wants to talk hockey. Stolars. He's just captivated by Stolars. Wanted to know why Stolars had bounced around a couple of different teams, because he's been so impressed with them at every stop and continues to be wowed by Stolars with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the great Scotty Bowman and this is, I would say, more of a random guy that he picked out. In Anthony Stolars was interested.
Well, there's a great story and a great answer there too, right? And it's one we've touched on in the past, and it involves our good friend Sudarshan Maharaj of the Anaheim Ducks. Because when Stolars was signed by Anaheim and he started going through video, he saw a guy that had never fully recovered from one of the surgeries he had previously. And when he met him, he realized that one side of his body, from a leg strength standpoint, was so much further ahead than the side that had been injured. And he'd never been given the time or a program to execute, or the time to execute a program or the program itself to balance out his body. And it was the belief that Sudsy had in Anthony and the determination to give him an off-season program to help him find that balance physically that was a big part of the building blocks of getting him. And this in Toronto is not his numbers last year in Florida were off the charts good, again in a backup role to Bob. And so there were signs this was coming. And when you talk to Anthony about it, he really credits Sudsy for that work and for taking the time to fly all the way to New Jersey to sort of see him train off ice and recognize some of the shortcomings. And then they had him go to Anaheim to help start to correct it in the offseason rather than waiting till September and seeing if he could just play the way he was playing before. So, I know that relationship remains strong between those two because Sudsy had such a strong impact on Anthony Stolars and helped him basically rebuild the body that was broken on one side.
Just occurred to me. last year to this year, the Florida Panthers now have 3 starting goaltenders, number 1 guys or co-number ones, with Stolar's battling Wall and Spencer Knight and our friend Bob. That's pretty impressive in 1 year, going from that kind of depth. Maybe that's why they picked up Mrazek and Vitek Vanacek and trying to replenish some of that depth.
Well, Vanacek for sure. Mrazek obviously went to Detroit, but probably has something to do with having a department of goaltending full of people that know about the position.
Paul Maurice did mention that. I can't remember the word he used, but it was conglomerate or something like that. and he's pretty accurate with, like, run down the list of people in the Florida Panthers goaltending department.
Some guy named Luongo heads it up. Heard of him. Pretty good. He's got Francois Allaire as a consultant. They have Leo Luongo, who was an excellent goalie coach. He actually recently transferred from being dedicated to the American Hockey League on a goalie coaching standpoint to doing a lot more scouting and development work. They then hired Sly Sylvan Rodrigue away from the Edmonton Oilers to be their American Hockey League goalie coach. And then they got Robbie Tallis, who we know well here on the InGoal Radio podcast and an InGoal Premium, as their NHL goaltending coach. So I wasn't doing the fingers thing as I ran through it. Maybe you guys were. That sounds like 5 or 6 really good names in really good positions, all working together to make the position of goaltending better for the Florida Panthers.
It's a lot of offices.
Fair.
Or desks.
Fair.
Or cubicles.
I just pictured them like scouts standing, leaning on the railing, looking over the ice. So it's just a certain amount of railing feet.
I like that. I like it. Hey, can actually, we didn't schedule this, but can I digress for a second on goalie coaching?
Never would you digress, Woody.
Well, I mean, talking about departments and things that, guys that have positive impacts on things.
Go nuts.
Maybe you guys saw it. We've already put it on our socials, but Four Nations Cup and the trophy itself was sent to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and the Hockey Hall of Fame showed off a picture because they'd engraved the team names on it. And David Alexander, the goaltending coach for Team Canada, who was at the tournament, who was on the ice working with the goalies, who obviously has a special bond with Jordan Binnington. I hope everyone saw, certainly in the Canadian feed as the celebration was going on, you saw them off in the back corner go for a big hug behind the scenes. Who I know, now I don't know the details in terms of his role with Canada, but this guy's one of the premier breakdown pre-scout guys when it comes to goaltending coaches. So my guess is he would have had a voice in figuring out how to score on other guys. I was disappointed, shocked, but I guess maybe I shouldn't be, but really disappointed not to see his name engraved in the trophy alongside what appeared to be every level of management that was involved in it. I'm not saying they didn't deserve to be there. Everybody did. But to not include a guy who is on the ice and part of the coaching staff, to me is just, again, maybe it was none intended, but it certainly feels disrespectful to a craft that is so often disrespected at the National Hockey League level, including by the Hockey Hall of Fame, where they refuse to even consider voting for somebody in the builder category, despite having a guy like Francois Allaire essentially change the game with what he did with the position. So end rant by Woody, but I was a little pissed to see that, if I'm honest, boys.
Amen, Woody.
Amen. Woody, I don't want to speak for them, but I will slide in an observation. I think it was just a honest oversight.
Can they fix it?
I don't think there is. I don't think there was anything calculated there to leave him off. Just based on, you talked about the players and the management, the support staff were all listed on that as well. So I truly believe somehow he just got left off the list, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a correction.
I hope there is, because we've seen goaltending coaches be left off other lists before when it comes to these things. Hell, for years they didn't even bother to take one to international competitions in Canada. They just neglected it completely. So to have one there that I believe played a role in this and then ignore it, maybe if it's not ignorance and it's just an honest mistake, then chalk it up and hopefully they get it fixed. Regardless, it should be on there.
I'll check for you, but that's the way I'm reading this.
And I get it.
Just purely an honest oversight.
Yeah, and I hope so, Darren. I really do hope so, and hopefully they get it corrected because he deserves to be there. He's one of the top guys in the game. He's got a Stanley Cup. He's been a big part of Binnington's success, and obviously it irked me, as you may be able to tell. It pissed me off.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is going to be interesting then, because we've got one of the great controversies in goaltending history going back a long way to deal with in the gear segment presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com. Tuck or untuck? And if you're on either side, you are a staunch defender of this, of your approach to it. What are we going to do? How do we deal with this today in the gear segment?
Well, before we get to how we deal with it today, and I may just end up sitting on the fence by the time it's all over. So there's a clue to how
good join me on the fence.
Job Cam, how good a job that Cam does selling his position to me in our upcoming gear segment. Let me just say that there are exciting things going on at the Hockey Shop right now, including the demo sale. Once a year, they put last season's demo equipment for sale up to 70% off to the public. We talk a lot about all the things that make the Hockey Shop unique. The ability to take out loaner gear and try before you buy, not just at their annual Tendy Fest every summer to take it on the ice as part of that, but to take gear out that they've purchased as demo gear every season. So, I'm thinking of switching from one company to the other, but I want to try it, see how it feels, see how it fits, see how it flexes, see how it performs with my game. They have a demo program at thehockeyshop.com, so make sure you check that out. And once a year, they sell off the old demos. That time is now. It is selling fast. There's a chance by the time you hear this, it will be largely sold out. So get there as soon as you do. Go check it out at thehockeyshop.com. They got lots of new stuff in stock. They got lots of sales on other, previous year inventory as the new stuff all comes in, but the demo sale is live now. Make sure you check it out at thehockeyshop.com. As for Tuck or Untuck, Darren, I have firmly been team Untuck. Let's go over to the Hockey Shop right now and see if Cam can convince me the wisdom of his ways as a full Tuck guy. Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, source for sports, where it is dress-up day for me.
Standing room only.
Yes, standing room only. I get to try on pants and chest protectors because we're going to talk a little bit about tuck and untuck.
Yeah.
The benefits, who does what.
Exactly.
What do you do, Cam?
Tuck all the way.
I'm an untuck guy.
Yeah, see, now we got two varying degrees. So why don't we even start off? Why?
There's actually very little reason for it. As a matter of fact, I should be the ultimate tuck guy because I lost an appendix to being untucked.
So there's already a vote for tucking.
And yet I still untuck.
Now we get this question, very, very common. And especially it's one of those things, well, if nobody ever really showed you why or the alternate option, you just kind of threw your chest on and probably just went for it, right?
Well, yes. And it becomes a personal preference at some point.
100%.
For me, I like having just a little extra bulk.
Yes.
So it's untucked. It's a little bigger, a little freedom of movement. I like it.
So we're going to preface this right off the bat. There's no right or wrong answer here. Like,
my way's the right way.
However, there are some benefits to...
Although almost nobody in the NHL uses my way.
See, there's another note. So let's get into it a little bit more. So we'll have Kevin, again, continue to play a little bit of dress up. So we'll start with showing off what is, in theory, untucked. So if he wants to grab the chest protector down to his left here.
Power, vapor.
THS spec.
THS spec, that's important.
Shadow arms.
Shadow arms on the back. Okay. We're going to get loud here for a sec, folks. Comfortable unit. Probably wouldn't normally wear my wristwatch on the ice, but
No.
All
right.
So how are we looking here?
Hold your arms out, Kevin. With the chest protector over top, Kevin's belly widens out by quite a bit. So your initial overall net presence is going to be wide down low. He's sitting into his crouch. He kind of gives that, again, that illusion that he is covering more net from his waist side out. Drawback, though, go seal up, Kevin. He starts to now push that chest protector together, essentially. He's hitting not necessarily a hard stop, but he's now pulling that chest forward. So now, as a bit of a drawback, if I now tuck this chest protector in, he'll hit a hard stop versus allowing that chest to scrunch up in front of him. So here's some of the differences now that we can start to see, especially on a chest protector that's used a little bit more, a little bit sloppier. It's like, yeah, I can leave it loose and let it flow out over top. But then as soon as you seal up, that chest protector now bulks and moves forward. So whether or not...
I'll be honest with you, I never thought of this, but you can actually kind of see it from the side, like kind of sit nice, and then once it does pop forward underneath.
Exactly.
And if I'm looking down at a puck, I'm guessing that's interfering with the chin of my mask as well.
Interfering, if you're looking through a screen and fighting through, and essentially you're making yourself potentially a little bit narrower, trying to cut, again, down and make sure that you have no holes. But if it's going outside or it's tipped, it's like essentially you have lost overall size. So
that makes no sense to me. I'm bigger.
Not yet.
Okay.
So what you do gain here now is freedom of motion. Twist side to side.
Ooh, dancing.
As you can see, there's no interference. Kevin's allowed to move freely. No issues there. So here's where usually the most feedback comes from leaving that chest untucked, is that I don't like anything to be attached down low. I like that feeling of being able to twist and move my units independently. So again, this again comes down to all personal preference based off of, what your specific feel is down low. But here's some of the kind of looks of that feel of untucked. Now we're going to show Kevin tucking in this wonderful CCM E-Flex chest and a couple of things unique to CCM that we'll show off here in a moment.
Interestingly enough, this is a chest protector I wear untucked.
Ah.
So this is a real social experiment.
So as usual, there's multiple different ways that you can do things here. So resist the urge to put it over front. We're going to now shove this in. So at your most basic, you want to get that chest all the way in. For starters, as you can see, pants have laces. What are the laces for in the pants? Well, they coincide with that nice little nylon tab right there. So the basic of tying yourself down, feed that through, and a nice, simple knot. So as you can already feel, probably, Kevin, is that it's now pulling the chest down kind of in the front. You'll have a little bit of that kind of tug feeling, for example. So CCM pants have an internal belt. On that belt, there's always been these clips on the side. Everyone always thought it was to center that belt inside the pant. Actually, it coincides with this nylon tab right here.
Does it coincide?
Coincide. You can now tuck in your chest and secure it down without suspenders. You can feel it?
I feel it.
Oh, you can feel it. So now that Kevin's sitting in, you can see the pant is now basically essentially being held up to a bit of a degree by those mounting points on the chest. It's creating a little bit of a natural tug to the chest too, as like pulling it down. Go into a crouch for me like you're in a stance. So you can see, though, that chest still rides back up. So everyone's always going to say about that neckline. I mean, in theory, you're going to be wearing your neck guard or a dangler to make sure that you have the ultimate of protection. What now I do like about this, now going to go seal up. So you hit a bit of a hard stop. The chest hits the sides, and you can't really go anywhere else.
But it doesn't come forward.
Exactly.
Okay.
So now how you feel like you're not being resisted, you're allowed to see over top of yourself a little bit more. You can get your arms in front a bit easier. In theory, you should have a little bit better control in terms of for trapping that puck against your chest. Move side to side. Now, again, you can see his whole unit kind of moves more as a one piece, so it's going to want to tug on the pants a little bit. You can probably feel that as you go turn. Now, that depends on the person. It depends on your own personal preference. If you don't mind that feeling of that little bit of torque as you go turn, then no problem. Your protection is going to move as one. No gaps as well. He's armored all the way down. Theory, he'll have his cup on too as well, so that will give him the rest of the protection that he needs.
No cup check today, Cam.
No cup check today. Next question. Okay, I don't have CCM pants, so I don't have that fancy little trick. How do I now going to keep that chest locked in? Suspenders. Up and over top of your shoulder floaters. Now, I like to tuck my suspenders in behind my shoulder floaters, so that helps to keep any plastic bits and stuff covered, as well as stop the actual suspender from floating away on you. So you'll feel that around your neck. Again, if you wear a neck guard or anything like that, you won't feel that like elastic against your neck. That said, there are some guys and some chest protectors that specifically line up that you can actually run the suspender over the shoulder floater.
And you can, some of them have that option.
So like say like a Vaughn, even a Bauer, for example, on the Shadow, they have that little strap that's up at the top that helps to anchor that suspender up on top. Again, if you find that your shoulder floaters are now riding up a little bit too high on you, that's where I potentially recommend this. However, keep in mind, there's a difference between that and puffing that shoulder floater up or now pulling it down with that suspender.
What if I want my shoulder floater to pop up and take a little extra?
Then you're probably better off running it, like I said, behind that shoulder floater itself.
The downside?
If you run it over top, in theory, you're taking away some size, presence to yourself.
Do I look smaller, folks, than I did in the other one? I feel a little more compact. I got to be honest, I feel a lot more mobile than I thought I would. I'm starting to wonder if maybe this is the way I should go.
It might be the way, anecdotally, at this point. But like you said, majority of guys that we've seen so far.
I don't see the guys get dressed in the show, but the majority of guys, from what I can see, are talking.
This is how I exactly wear my gear myself.
Not that that means anything.
No.
Pretty low bar from a performance standpoint there.
Right about there. Bar is quite high, though. That said, it is something worth trying. Pair of suspenders, a little bit of a wider set of pants. Give it a shot, folks. Let us know what you do in the comments below.
Let me know if I look bigger in the first one or this one. Which would you recommend? This would be a little Woody experiment. Got a couple more skates this week. I might give us a go, Cam.
Maybe some feedback from Kevin later on.
Too late for my appendix, but not too late for yours. If you got any questions, make sure you give them a shout, because there are, as Cam said, different models. Obviously, these pants have an inner belt. Makes it a little easier to do it.
There's chested hybrid tuck, too, as well.
All
leaving it out in front without also tucking it into your pants. That's a Bauer Shadow thing specifically, but there's more options to this. There's more than 5 different ways to get it done. Give us a call. We can talk about it. 604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790. Or check us out at thehockeyshop.com. But I don't think you're going to find a whole lot of information on tuck versus untuck.
To tuck or untuck? That is the question.
Shakespeare, folks.
I heard the raw recording of that the first time. Please tell me you left in a little bit of the because I could tell what was going on while you were doing it. It actually made sense to leave some of that in. So, Hutch, did you?
Not yet finished, but I'll do my best for you.
Theater of the mind. You could have just said yes.
Yeah, but we haven't finished the show, so I haven't finished the editing of the show.
It is a great reminder, folks, that a lot of that swooshing is me getting changed as we shoot the video as Darren listened to the raw, which is also a great reminder that there's a visual component to this over on our YouTube channel. And in this case in particular, especially since a lot of the conversation went to how big I did or didn't look tucked or untucked, I would highly recommend checking that out.
I need to see that, because I've transitioned from tuck to untuck in the last 3 years. And I
take credit for that.
And it was from you. You talked about it so passionately that I gave it a try, and I love it. And I've had 2 different chesties in that period and used it with both. The reason I didn't for the longest time was the mirror test. I didn't want to look pudgy. I didn't want to look fat, like the thing hanging down there. And I found it doesn't when you're untucked, and I just have more freedom. I don't get as hot either, and
that's a good point.
I just enjoy it more. And I'm surprised to hear the other side with now the advantages of being tucked from a making saves point.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought of them that way, and especially the idea of the chest sort of, if it's untucked and you push your arms together like in a sort of cradle save, that it pushes that chest protector forward, which to me, I've definitely noticed that, you can get that chest, he pushes up into the bottom of your...
I'm with you there. That does happen. Yeah.
Chin of the mask, yeah. And so that becomes a bit of an issue at times. I'm going to try the other way. I'm with you, Darren. I like Team Untuck, despite, as we said in the segment there, I have literally lost an appendix to Team Untuck, and it was poorly fitting. That might have been part of the problem.
The appendix?
The appendix was no longer fitting at all, thanks to the slap shot that hit the bare area, because the equipment was ill-fitting and the goalie kind of sucked and got all twisted around. We talk a lot about counter rotation. When I first started playing, I was the definition of counter rotation. And counter rotation and a bad fit between your chest and your pants leaves holes that someone exposed. So it's a long story. I almost died. I remind my wife of it on an annual basis that it's her fault. But beyond that, despite that, I still go untuck. I'm going to try the other way. For you, Darren, though, you also mentioned that untuck gives you a little bit of an air gap. So as much as that chest may push forward in a cradle save, if you're facing NHL shooters like you are, a little bit of a chest pushed forward gives you an air gap between your body and the puck hitting your chest, which might help with the comfort level with some of those rockets you see.
So I think you can get both. I think you can get a bit of an air gap and be team tuck. because you don't have to cinch everything down as tightly as you possibly can. So if you let the pants hang wide open, and if you keep the suspenders fairly loose, you're not compressing everything down, you still get a bit of an air gap. So I was, towards the end of my time playing, I was fully team tuck. And I think when you reach both the beer league age and the beer league figure, Darren did it for vanity reasons with the mirror. For me, I think it was just for practical reasons. I was already pushing out far enough. I didn't need the chesty to stick even further out.
Well, let's be honest though. Like it does. You don't have to look like an unmade bed if you.
Some guys do though, right? Like you see it in the show.
Yeah, like but not
some guys do. I was surprised that I didn't. I was expecting it to look sloppy, and it's
yeah.
fine.
How tight do you make the chesty on you? Like it's got straps too. You could strap that thing down real firm and have no air gap and still be untuck.
Yeah, untuck does not mean automatic on Anton Hudobin.
That's a good analogy.
And I love me some Anton Hudobin, don't get me wrong. But like, again, a guy who at times kind of looked like an unmade bed out there.
Did you hear Cam talk about neck guard and dangler?
I heard him talk about the neck guard. I do recall something about a dangler.
Yeah.
I may have had if you check the YouTube video, you'll probably see a guilty look there when he talked about the dangler, because I knew you were going to go right to that, Darren. Mm-hmm. Certainly, I will say this. The tuck chesty with the CCM one, where how the clips integrate in that segment, or using the laces on the pants to sort of tie it down, I definitely felt like the chest was pulled lower, and I'm already wear a pretty sturdy, beefy, well padded neck protection with D3O foam in it for protection reasons. I would be considering a dangler given the amount of exposure that sort of tucking in felt to me like it was creating. And I also got to say, like, I need to do more mirror tests, because pulling it down over my shoulders, like one of the reasons I like with untucked is I don't mind the chest protector popping up when I drop to the ice. I like a little extra coverage over the shoulders. I don't want everything being too connected if it's at the expense of being bigger and covering more real estate, especially as a guy who closes his eyes when he makes most of his saves.
It's funny that you say that. I'd love to know what the Allaire way of doing all that was, because you don't want it too connected. But remember, that was knee pads to pants to chesty, so that when you went down, it pushed the chesty up quite on purpose as a result of being connected.
And that was more about the knee pads being connected to the pants, which pushed the pants up. And of course, back then the inner belt was legal. Of course, I have an inner belt. And because that would allow your inner belt to stay connected to your waist, well, the barrel of the pant pushed up and the chest went with it.
Yeah, still connected a bit, right?
But again, you needed to connect the knee pads.
No, I understand. I started with that.
The pants just drop.
I started with that. I'm just saying it's interesting. The other thing I seem to recall, because I was definitely tie down for that reason of not wanting it to ride up into my neck, although it was just to the point that it would stop that, but not cinched down the way you had it in the video, I think. I seem to remember somebody made a chesty where there was actually a tie down point inside the chesty, so that you could be team untucked, but you could still tie the pants to the inside of the chesty and hold it down. I think that
would make sense.
Yeah, and if not, that's a good idea for somebody to incorporate.
Makes total sense that would.
No,
there'd be a loop on the inside of the chesty.
Yeah, no, Woody fully supports your motion to make us to make us all.
If I didn't see it, then I wrote it in a suggestion to a company when we were reviewing a chesty.
And if it doesn't exist, then it's my idea.
Okay, exactly.
On the subject of the mirror test, I was skating with some of the AHL guys in Henderson this morning, actually. And one of the players was commenting on my gear. He's like, I think you have the nicest set in the league.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And what is it?
Yeah.
What is it? What kind of gear are you wearing?
CCM.
CC. Keep going.
Axis AF.
AF. That is what it should have been named. Am I so in your head that you just called it that? And it wasn't on purpose?
I always do it because you said it first and it makes sense. It does.
CCM should have listened to me.
Okay, I got it wrong there. But
that's all right. That's all
what
right.
I refer to it. Axis
Love
AF.
it.
It may be XF, but when you wear it with the color pattern that you chose and as sick as it looks, it is AF all the way.
And I also told the player, I said, well, it looks like new. I didn't want to ask him how many years he thought that I had it.
Just nobody hits
It's
it.
like new. But we were doing a drill, and Freddie Brathwaite was out there, and he was working with one of the goaltenders, and he rotated in. That goaltender rotated in, and then I did one drill, and he was yelling at me because I slid across. He's like, "Stay on your feet, stay on your feet." It was awesome. Like Freddie's so fun, and I said, "Yeah," and then I saddled up to him and said, "The reason why I slid over there is because I wasn't watching the drill before I went in and was expecting that guy to shoot and thought he was going to shoot. And then I had to recover and slide over." So then he understood. But the idea of staying on your feet is now drilled back into my head. And I'd been sort of sliding back to.
We talked about this last week.
Yes, that was exactly what I was thinking of. How I was sort of going back to a middle ground between slide to feet to somewhere in the middle.
Well, I think it's probably depends on the level, Darren? Because like I find that like in the beer league type stuff, I can get away with the slide a lot more than I can in the higher end skates.
Yeah. If you slide, and even if you're good with a slide, it's like you're still not going to get there. Not going to happen. Let's get into our parent segment, brought to you by Stop It Goaltending U, the app.
Yes, Stop It Goaltending U, the app, as we tell you every week, is something you really need to check out. All the resources, weekly updates, 1-minute videos, quick hits, 5-minute deep dives, and then 20-minute super deep dives. There are new lessons every week that combine the 25 years of coaching experience at Stop It Goaltending into a simple-to-use app. And of course, every time you buy the Stop It Goaltending U, the app subscription, you automatically get a subscription to InGoal magazine, the premium edition, the best of both worlds. Stop It Goaltending U, the app, and InGoal magazine, InGoal premium. Between the two, we will make you a better goaltender on your time and your terms.
Parent segment with David Hutchison.
I'm probably going to be beating my head against a wall here, pointlessly, gentlemen, but today I would like to say that it is time to change the dialogue around goals and goaltending. Couple of weeks ago, you heard me get a little bit heated, a little bit grouchy about all the online commentary about Jordan Binnington. People were labeling the goals that he'd given up at the Four Nations this week, and there was a lot of talk about asking people to replace him and bring somebody else in. He just wasn't good enough for Canada. Look, when you give up 2 goals, it's a good game no matter how you slice it. But we always find a way to turn it into a big national debate, saying there's no such thing as a good 5-hole goal, as if nothing else in the game matters. I said before that this kind of talk is bad for goalie development, and I stand by that. Today, I would like to expand on why and how it applies to you as a goalie parent, as well as to goalies and coaches who are listening. We, of course, are in a unique position because every mistake we make is dissected, and I'd be preaching to the choir if I went too deep into that, of course. We all know a winger can make 10 mistakes in a game and keep getting his shifts, and a goalie makes a couple, and suddenly he's down 2-0, might even be sitting on the bench. And everybody in the building is convinced he should have stopped both of them. So let's first go back to my point about Jordan Binnington. If you hop online and start calling out goals while demanding a replacement, you are feeding into the culture of negativity. As a fan, I get it. It's your right. And I get that debate can be kind of fun. But as we've said before, this is exactly why Kevin created Pro Reads. It's to counter all that negativity and let goalies explain what they saw, why they did what they did, and to celebrate the things they did well. So, how does all this talk hurt development? Well, for starters, because negativity is really easy and people love to join in. People echo the negativity. More people pile on, and before long, this behavior becomes the norm. It has become the norm. And I know the argument, these guys get paid millions, they should learn to deal with it. I don't agree with you, but even if you do believe that, here's the real issue. That kind of an attitude trickles down. So the way we evaluate pro goaltenders seeps into every level of hockey, junior hockey, minor hockey, right down to the youngest kids. Parents, coaches, and even worse, other players start doing the same thing. Evaluating a goalie is just all about finding out what he did wrong. So who would want their kid to be a goalie in that environment. You can tell me all day that this kind of criticism builds character and makes kids stronger on and off the ice. And sure, maybe to some extent that's true. But what about the ones who get too much of it? They quit. What about the ones who see it happening and think it's all too much? They don't even start. A lot of goalie coaches struggle with this too, I have to say. They spend a lot of their energy telling goalies what they did wrong. The ones who come out to a team practice, stand in the corner, watch a drill, every time they get a break, they come in, well, if you just done this, you would have stopped that one. If you just set your feet, if you just had a better stance, if you just held your glove this way, every goal comes with another explanation and it's all negative. Now, I am not saying this is every coach at all. There's a lot of great goalie coaches out there, but it is out there. I probably talk about my son too much, guys, but here we go again. I was watching Maddie's game last night, and the Moose Jaw Warriors head coach, Mark O'Leary, was interviewed, and he said something that I love, not talking about the goaltending. He said, sure, you can point out mistakes, but we've got to catch these kids doing things right and build on that. And that sort of sparked me thinking about this today. To me, that's it right there. We need to change the culture. We need to be better examples to the kids and to the parents. So instead of hopping online to list mistakes, let's talk about what goalies are doing well. More stuff like pro reads. And I don't just mean the crazy saves we all love. Like, that's great. Let's celebrate those. But if you want to show me you're a goalie expert, tell me how well a guy skates. Tell me how well he stays in position. Tell me how well he reads the play. Should have had that one that went 5-hole. Come on, give me a break. How is that helping anybody? So parents, the takeaway for me today is twofold. One, please don't feed into this at the rink. Whether it's pointing out flaws in your kid's goalie partner, the kid playing at the other end, or even your own child, announcing mistakes is not helping. Don't dissect the game with your kid, except to highlight what they did well. Your first conversation after a game should not be about how they could have stopped goal number 1, 2, or whatever. Catch them doing something right and build off it. If you're not sure what to say, if you don't think you know the position well enough, well, keep reading InGoal. Lots of great stuff out in there you can learn from as a parent. Take one of the certification coach courses from USA Hockey or Hockey Canada. And if you want, you can even give me a shout and I'd be happy to give you a few good things to say. Coaches, I'd say the same thing. In practice, focus on what they do well and build on that. If you've got a goalie struggling with depth, when he gets it right, jump all over it. Give him high fives, give him positive reinforcement, and ignore the rest. See what happens. Goalies, you too, after a game or of a practice, ask yourself what you did well. Think about all the goalies we've had on the podcast who talk about journaling, like Connor Lecouve last week. They spend more time and energy focusing on the positives. So give it a try. When you can take a loss, when you can give up more goals that you'd like, and you can still walk away saying, you know what? Obviously, I wish we'd won, but I feel pretty good about how I played today. Then you know you're on the right track. And for all of us, let's create a better environment for goalies. Be the example. Yep, I know if we do that, more kids might be open to playing the position. And more importantly, our own kids might enjoy their time at the rink a whole lot more.
I don't think we should ever talk about goals.
I don't really, unless it's brought up to me.
I got a challenge for you,
What's that?
Hatch. Come watch me play and see if you can find anything positive to say.
Woody, you sure look like you're having fun out there. Woody, that gear is beautiful.
Woody, the restraint you showed not smashing your stick after the 7th goal was remarkable.
Yes, sir.
I don't mind goalies get mad every now and then. Like, players do it all the time. Why can't a goaltender show him emotion and let it out?
As long as they know how to reel it in and they're not consumed by it, I agree with you completely.
I'm thinking the player who does it, slams the gate, is able to let it go, the same philosophy, but we don't judge them.
Don't we always talk about letting your emotions out and talking about things that are bothering you and so on? Like, there might be something kind of cathartic about that so that you can get resettled.
Although, again, it is a line. You can get so worked up and angry, and then it can build tension. You know, even screaming. I tend to drop the odd F-bomb rather loudly, but even like you can feel like you're letting it go, but also it creates like that anger and that tension. We don't want that.
We also want to be that person that can be sort of water off a duck's back and not even let those things get to us in the first place. I'm probably contradicting myself here, but it's probably not so much about not getting upset. It's just not even letting ourselves get to that point in the first place.
Yeah, I'm not good at that.
No. A little bit of Zen. Woody needs some meditation in his life.
Our friends at Visual Edge present Pro Reads. Who's the conversation with this week?
Devin Cooley of the Calgary Wranglers, having a heck of a season with them. I expect him to be in the National Hockey League again soon. We sat down with him last year, so the video will be of him in a San Jose Sharks uniform at the end of last season. We have a great breakdown this week. 4-on-3 power play. Devin gets into stance, some of the changes he made last year. I think we've seen that evolution continue in Calgary this year. He gets into reads in terms of when you can be narrow versus when to get into a wider stance, how to pre-read the options. There's lots of them in a 4-on-3, so it might think it's a lot of open ice and a lot of dynamic. But in a moment, he basically isolates two distinct options, and that's all he has to prepare for. So he really does a great job of simplifying what can be a complicated situation in the minds of a lot of people. And then we talk about how he manages screens behind that in the 4-on-3. Again, because of that open space, players are able to cut across and shift and change the angle in the middle of the ice, forcing him to adjust how he manages the screen. We get into all of that in this week's Pro Reads, brought to you by our friends at Visual Edge. At Pro Reads, we're all about helping you see and read the game better through insights from National Hockey League goaltenders. At Visual Edge, they're all about helping you see the puck better and look off the puck better, see the ice, scan the ice, be able to do all those things that allow you to read the game better. They've got an online tool combined with some cool glasses that kind of look like what you'd wear to a 3D movie, but they're a lot nicer. They have a series of different exercises. You take it, what they call an edge test to get your base scores, and then run you through a series of exercises to improve those scores. Tracking the puck into you, that's convergence. You find out whether you're good or bad at it, and they will develop tools to help you train improvements that are necessary. Divergence, that's the ability to sort of zoom out and look at the zone, to read a play. How do you fare in that test? Well, good or bad, they're going to find ways to improve you with the daily exercises that you can do. We heard from Cam Talbot in last week's Pro Reads about what a valuable tool he feels Visual Edge has been to his game late in his career and how it's improved his game. You can get that too. Visual Edge now has monthly subscriptions, and for our InGoal Premium members, look soon for the chance to get 1 month trial free. Make sure you check it out. Check out our Pro Reads at InGoalMag.com for a special discount code as well. If you're not already a subscriber to InGoal Premium, make sure you grab one of those because it'll help you save money on Visual Edge as well.
There's so many advantages and opportunities that you can tap into. That doesn't mean that if you're a adult player that you need all this.
But you can.
But you can, or you can use one of them.
I've started using them again, and I'm seeing, it's funny, I'm seeing the difference. So even us beer leaguers can benefit from it for sure.
Sense Arena feature interview this week discussing the life and times of Filip Gustavsson. NHL Sense Arena is a tool.
Sure is. And guys, as you know, I love that NHL Sense Arena runs competitions. And I love that when you're using it, you're training the same way as the pros. You're not just simulating what they do on the ice in virtual reality, although that's true, but you're actually using the same NHL Sense Arena platform that the pros use to train. Now, by the time most of you hear this show, their most recent competition will have just wrapped up, this Stadium Series competition, where they even recreated the stadium and the Blue Jackets and Red Wing uniforms. It was pretty cool, pretty fun. Now, looking at the competition standings, things could still change before the final results because we're about a day out as we're recording, but Owen Leonard take a bow, sitting in first place amongst the goaltenders. And gentlemen, in ninth, none other than Kazimir Kaskisuo, two-time InGoal Radio podcast guest and pro goalie. How fun is that? You are in the competition. The pros are in it with you. That's pretty sweet. And congratulations to the 9 people who are ahead of Kazimir. The winner is getting a stick from our friends at CCM, and I trust that Kaz would pass his along to someone else if he made a late surge and made it to the top. No pressure, Kazmir. There are always more competitions coming along with all the amazing drills, training plans, neurocognitive exercises, and more. Sense Arena is an incredible tool for training away from the rink, whether you're in the NHL, minor hockey, or yes, just playing in your local rec league. And right now, they're offering 50% off an annual plan at sensearena.com. Head over there now and use the code IGM50 to save.
Woody had a chance to catch up with the Minnesota Wild. We discussed Marc-Andre Fleury and his appearance in episode 300. Filip Gustavsson gets a little advanced exposure.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The Wild were in town for a couple of days here in Vancouver. They were also in Seattle ahead of it, and the Canucks were off. So I went down to Seattle, spent a day with them there, caught back up with them here in Vancouver for a practice day and a game day, banked a ton of content for us here at InGoal, including this conversation with Filip Gustavsson, who has really come into his own with the Minnesota Wild over the past couple of seasons, is having another great year this year. We talked about the adjusted save percentages earlier in this episode and where he sits in the top 10 and the kind of season that he's having again. We get into all of it, sort of his evolution as a goaltender, his roots in Swedish hockey. We hear a lot about the goaltending coaching over in Sweden. An old friend of InGoal magazine comes up in this conversation, Linda Blomqvist, who we featured as one of the inventors of the RVH out of Sweden. And
the day we launched InGoal magazine premium. She was the very first article.
I did not see. There you go. And so it all comes back together. That's who Filip goes back and works with every summer. He talked about that work. He talked about his evolution with the different goalie coaches he's worked in North America. We just kind of got into everything. It's one of those, we had 15 minutes where we just crammed as much goalie knowledge as we could into the conversation. And he was a really good guest, really enjoyed it. And I think you will too. First of all, I wanted to ask you what it's been like the last couple of years playing alongside Marc and what you've learned from him. Because there's some things in his game that are a little different from what we see from a lot of guys these days.
Yeah, it was always like when I came to Minnesota, it was at the end of the career. And, sometimes it's a little sensitive between the goalies because both of us wants to play all the time and prove ourselves and win as much as we can. Flowers winning the Stanley Cups has been winning, and it almost felt like it was more like just, I would say, some goalies kind of get mean to the other goalie if he gets to play, and Flower was more like happy and like try to help and push and learn. And as you said, we play very differently. I'm more of I would say more technical, a little more blocking if you compare it to him. And like when he used to play, he's never played the reverse VH or stuff like that previously. And practices usually come and ask, like, how do you do in this situation? How do you get this to work? And I also watch him because I don't want to be as blocking. I want to be reactive and use my arms and do saves. Maybe not as flashy as him, but still making those saves. So I try and take a little bit, but not get away from my game either.
Is there anything? It's funny because when I talked to him in Seattle, he praised your post play and your post work and said he'd learned from you. Is there anything specific? Like there are things he does, like for example, the poke check that we don't see much anymore. Like, do you guys talk about that at all, or might we see the odd one from you in the future?
No, I usually I do the poke check sometimes when I'm frustrated, or sometimes on breakaways when I feel like when I don't feel like I really have it.
A little aggression,
and it usually doesn't work for me. And it's something when I do it, it's just not. I'm not really there in my head, and as I said, getting frustrated. So I try not to do it. I don't think it's as effective, maybe.
It's funny because it's not your game, right? Like how have you learned that over the years? You've had different voices. I know Pierre grew in Ottawa really well. Obviously, Freddie Chabot here. Your game, you talked about your game. Bringing new ideas to it without abandoning your foundation. How have you sort of found that balance as you've moved from place to place and settled in here?
Well, I always go back to Sweden every summer, and when I played my junior years and up to the pro team in Sweden there, I had this goalie coach, and every summer I go back and I work with her all summer long,
Linda
Yeah, Linda.
Blomqvist.
Yeah, Linda Blomqvist, and we always go back and work with her. We used to have Anders Nilsson was there working with her too. And, you know, even though we don't talk after every game or anything like that, now she still watches all the games. And then, you know, I send her a text and like, hey, what do you see in my game? Like, how's my foundation? And then I try to do all the technique wise we learned from the game back home there, and then adapting with a little more reactive and that type of playing style, because their style is even more blocking, because you can have a little more bigger shoulder pads in Europe and all that stuff, so it works a little better. But I just try and keep in contact with her, and you know, she usually reminds me when I start to do stupid stuff or start getting back.
Get away from your foundation.
Exactly.
What? So if I could ask you, like, because a lot of guys will have like Mark talked to me about having, like, for him it's hands, like different things that are triggers to their foundation. If you were to have to write down what your foundation is, or when you talk to Linda, what you try and get back to, how would you describe it?
Well, right now it's mostly like it's easy to get too passive when you have your hands more next to your side instead of having them in front of you a little bit. And usually when you have them in front of you and have them a little loose, you're usually set and ready. So I try to narrow the stance a little bit to be able to move easier on the feet and get better pushes, because the game is so quick. And having those hands in front there, it puts you a little bit on your toes to get you ready.
I remember, I think it was Pekka Rinne describing it as almost like a steering wheel. Your hands out in front of you, like everything moves as one piece out in front of you.
Yeah. And I had this goal coach when I was in Belleville with we had like just a basketball between our gloves and blocker, and we dropped the basketball and we catch the puck and we catch the basketball, just to have those hands in front there and just work on it to make it as natural as possible, because sometimes it's just very easy and comfortable, just have it next to you and just have that super blocking style.
You can kind of lose your hands when they get behind you a little bit.
Yeah, and then you have those very good players that just see it right away and they put the puck top corner.
I love the basketball one. I haven't heard that before. I saw the Leafs recently. They had the medicine ball out in front to move. Is that? Do you remember who that was? I'm trying to.
Yeah, Corey Cooper, and we had those drills. So
that's funny because Corey Cooper learned to juggle from InGoal magazine. he actually, like, we had a thing when teach you how to juggle in 15 minutes, and he did it, and he sent me the video. So what great guy. Some of the other influences. Obviously, you're just back from the Four Nations.
Mm-hmm.
Goaltending is such a big piece of what happens in Sweden. Like, when did you have your first goalie coach?
My first real goalie coach was probably I would say 13, 14 maybe. Like you always had the parent coming out and shoot on you and a little bit like that, and went to a few like hockey schools. But when I was 12, I moved into Skellefteå, or to that team, the main team, all the way up to the SHL team, and we started having a goalie coach from, I think, like U14 maybe, or U13. I would say U14, maybe U13, like once a week or something.
Do you feel like that's there's so much effort put into it? Do you feel like that's a big part of why we see so many great Swedish goalies these days?
Yeah, and I think so. Like, even in the junior program, like, that's one of the reasons I moved teams in Sweden too, to get to Linda, because she was a full-time employee there with Luleå and the under 18 and under 20 team, and Skellefteå only had Chris Holm, a great goalie coach that's from the so that's on the SHL team, but he's also a video coach on that team. So didn't have as much time to go down and be with the under 18 and under 20 team. And I told him that. I was like, Luleå, they have this full time, they produce a lot of goalies, and like I'm just want to do it for me and like get what's gonna work best for me. Like, are you gonna get a person that's gonna be a goalie coach full time with the junior team? And at that moment they didn't want to put the money there, or didn't want to do that. So they got angry with me because I moved, but I did it for me and it worked out. And now we're better friends again.
Transition over here. You talked about narrowing your stance.
Mm-hmm.
The game's gotten so dynamic east-west. Is that sort of an answer from a goalie as we try and solve this new offense? Is that one of the solutions for you, at least, that makes sense?
Yeah, and previous years I've been even more aggressive. Like, if they come in on a 3-on-2 or 2-on-1, I've been way outside my crease to almost like, I don't know, 3-4 feet outside, and like coming back with speed, and it's so hard to find the timing and the depth perspective to be ready to push over if they make the pass instead of just being top crease and just have a little bit of momentum backwards. To try to work a little bit with that this year to just play a little deeper there on those entries to be able to go east-west.
It's funny, I've heard that a little bit, like guys sort of used to be get out at the red line. Now it's like sort of sitting 3/4 depth, waiting almost till it's over the blue line before you make that first push.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we try and do. Because if you can see it from last year, I was way more aggressive on those ones, and this year we have said we hold it back, been working on it, and we've seen more success in that type of style.
I was going to say a little less reliant on rhythm and timing too, I would imagine. Like you said, the more you're moving, the more you got to kind of get it right.
Yeah, exactly. It's way easier, and you're more set when you're not moving too, so it's just way easier to rotate and push.
You a big gear guy?
A little bit. Yeah.
What do you like about the Bauer stuff? It's funny because I was watching you guys in Seattle and just watching the puck rocket off yours in comparison. There is quite a difference on the rebounds.
Yeah, right now I got a fresh new pair back home, so I'm gonna switch after tomorrow's game. But yeah, the pads and the blocker, especially the blocker, they just pop off. You can, like, even if you see when Fleury has new gear, you can see you can hear it on the sound how much harder it is on the blocker and pop off. And like since they start with this, what they call it, they start with the Odin and then the 1X, or I don't know what they're really calling this.
It was originally Odin with the Cortex skin and everything. Yeah.
But like they're so light, but still so hard and poppy. And then they did the one piece knee, so it's all connected. So the rotation, if you're falling or something, the pad is still stuck flat on the ice there, because you can see a lot of other pads that kind of go up in the middle in front of your knees if you sit in the butterfly, and even back in the foot they pop up a little bit.
I was going to say, quite the contrast for you. You're not going to leather straps anytime soon.
No, I'm never going back. I'm going to keep the one under my boot, but that's it.
What are some of the other adjustments you've had to make over the last couple of years? Like even from Ottawa to here, or even from Sweden to North America? Like if you look back at that path, what are some of the biggest adjustments as the game's changed and your game's changed? It's a big question. Sorry.
It's a big question. Yeah. I would say in Europe, you usually had like 20 shots was like a normal game, 20 or less shots. You never had as many shots. And then you come over here, you can have 35, 40 shots, and you just, like, every time they get into the zone, it's a scoring chance almost. Like they have a chance to shoot, and usually they feels like some teams have started to shoot less now because they just want to have quality shots. And then you have like Carolina, sometimes feels like they have a 3-second rule that they need to shoot if they have the puck on the stick for more than 3 seconds. So a lot like that, because in Europe you have the bigger ice, and if the puck was in the corner, you can almost stand on your flat legs or straight legs there, and you can just relax and breathe, and it feels so much slower, so you can just take your time and just you push over. You have lots of time waiting for the shot, and here it's like you're just pushing. It's almost like you have to drop in the butterfly right away because you're not going to get down otherwise in time. And I think just the speed and being able to be ready all the time. And then we've been working a lot on like screens and tips, since it's more narrow, more people just natural comes in front of you, and then you have all these guys standing out after practice for 20 minutes practicing and just tipping the pucks. They're so good at tipping the puck now at that you just have to find it through the screen and try and be as big as possible for those tips coming in.
It's funny because we've talked about depth, and yet the old rule on screens and tips was to get as close to the tip as possible.
Yeah.
Which sounds great, but if it hits something, the scrambles, you got to recover all that space, right? Like it's a real tough balance.
Yeah, it's just like you kind of have to, because sometimes when they tip it, it goes so quick, the puck doesn't lose any speed, so you're not going to have time to react anyways. You just have to have that depth to be as big as possible. But then, as you said, it just hits you, and then you have a rebound, and you probably have 3 guys around you, and you just have to find a way not to chase it too much, and just kind of have to back off again and try and block it. So
is that something adjusting to the chaos? That's something you've gotten better at? Because that's one a lot of guys talk about that, like sort of how do I manage the chaos? A lot of guys, when they first come over, they move too much. Now just sit back and make sure you got the ice sealed.
Yeah, because it feels like when it's a scramble, players just try and get a hit on it, and usually it's on the ice if they just try and hit the puck just a little bit. So yeah, I think practicing on staying calm there and let the puck just come to you when it's a scramble and chaos a little bit.
When you lose it in those scrambles, any tips for fun? Like when you can't see the puck, what do you look for to try and figure out where it is? I've had some guys say audio too. They listen for things.
Yeah, of course. Like you try and hear where the puck is. If you try and find it through the screen first, and you see the puck is shot, but you can never find it afterwards. You kind of know when it's gonna hit the boards or hit the glass or iron or anything. So you kind of know when the sound cue should be there, and otherwise you kind of have to look at the players to see what their reaction is, because usually the people in front of you can see the puck, and then you can like read it off them what's happening with the puck or where it's at.
You can't see the puck, but you can see what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Last one, who's your guy growing up?
My idol?
Yeah.
Well, my dad was a defenseman playing up, so I always went and watched his game. And goalie wise, when we were out playing street hockey at school, I always wanted to be Fredrik Norrin, a Finnish goalie.
I know Fredrik Norrin, and he runs gold in the net schools there, or he used to.
Yeah, maybe. He used to play in Linköping back then in Sweden, and everyone wanted to be Henrik Lundqvist there on the schoolyard, and it was taken. So I was like, I'm Fredrik Norrin, because I remember I watched him play there in the SHL, and he was great. Later on, I stopped watching it because it's a little older school, I would say, and I really loved how Braden Holtby played, Varlamov and Carey Price.
Not a bad list. Philip, really appreciated this. Really enjoyed it. A lot of time I took from you today, but it's sincerely appreciated.
Thank you very much.
I've never met him.
He is he can come across as a little quiet, but as you heard there, once you get him talking about, like I've only talked to him once before, and it was sort of more in a pregame, morning skate, formal interview, post-game type environment. I've never had a chance to really sit down with him like that. And so I didn't know what to expect, quite honestly, but really enjoyed the conversation. And like I said, hopefully our audience did as well. There were some really good nuggets in there.
He always has good setups too.
He does. A man of style.
Yeah.
And we talked about the gear too, and he likes the way the Bauer stuff performs, but he's still in the true glove, which is interesting. So, we got into all of that.
It's funny how the glove, like people just find their perfect glove trapper, and they won't switch from it.
There can't be a piece we're more connected to.
Yeah, it's just interesting how you can have the same glove and one person loves it and the other person's like, it's not
too.
right.
Yeah. Just watch the online comments.
So the funny thing is, earlier in the season, I did a piece on that for NHL.com, just like mismatched equipment. And Gustavsson was one of the guys. And what he said was he actually had a Bauer glove ready to go, I think, last season. Loved the way it felt, got off to a slow start. And because of the slow start, he switched back and hasn't looked back. So he loved the way the Bauer glove felt, but things didn't go well at the beginning, so it was gone.
And I've told you guys the story about Aiden Hill and wearing the Brian's glove. And he was testing out the pads, and they just had the blocker and trapper there at a summer skate. So he put on the glove and went, whoa, this is the best glove I've ever worn, and stuck to it. Basically switched everything because he loved the glove so much. So it's there.
It's less of an important piece for me, Darren, because I can't catch a puck. I might as well have two blockers. So,
you know what? The XF that I'm wearing right now, the puck does stay in it much better, and the break-in has been awesome.
Good to hear, because that was a pro palm for you.
Yeah, I'm enjoying that. Certainly enjoying that, and I feel better. But it's the ones that I miss entirely that frustrate me. Like zip.
Yeah. Given the level of shooter you're facing, I think that's understandable.
You know what I'm used to doing now is they go off, they hit the post, and then I just wait to hear if it bounce. I hear a bounce or not, and I'm like, please bounce, meaning that it went up and out instead of down and into the net. This has been fun. I look forward to the Marc-Andre Fleury conversation that you were able to catch up.
Yeah, it's a solid half hour with one of the all-time greats, and like I said, we've got a big milestone coming up, folks. So we're not holding out on you. We're just saving it for the big day.
For David Hutchison, Kevin Woodley, thank you for listening. Cam was great today. That chesty tuck or untuck gear segment is available on the YouTube channel. Check that out because just a visual ad may be able to help you understand exactly what he was trying to get across. Good stuff. Well, we'll talk to you next week. Good goaltending from all of us at InGoal Radio, the podcast.